So good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to our Thursday morning broadcast, 10 a.m. UK time. Doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. Isn't that right, John?
That's right. That's right. Some of us are not in the UK right now.
Yeah, so you flew back, well, you flew back last Wednesday?
Yeah, a week ago Wednesday. So it's, what, 8 days now?
Yeah, okay. So for last Thursday morning, actually, yeah, you were.
Yeah. Today is American Thanksgiving, which is partially why I flew back when I did.
There you are. If I had to remember that, even though you did mention it a few times, we could have had a nice Thanksgiving slide in the presentation for all our American listeners. Yeah, but yeah, it's a nice family time. Are you managing to get some of the family meal, family time, I'm guessing?
Yeah. Well, just before I left, my daughter and our partner flew in from Hungary, and then my son is here. He's down from New York City. So yep, we're ticking a few of those family boxes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we're looking forward to Christmas on our side, as you know, obviously big for Americans as well, but that's definitely we enjoy about a family time at Christmas, which is great. Okay, let's get straight into today. So it's myself and John today on the broadcast, and we're actually going to be doing a sort of special Ask John segment today. I've got a couple of interesting speakers lined up for the next 2 weeks before we stop for Christmas, but we thought it'd be good just to sort of slow down a bit and just look at some of the questions that have been put to John and
clear the backlog.
You can catch up with the backlog. Yeah, this could turn into a TV series. Ask John. Transatlantic. People will be buying the rights. You'll be competing with Shark Tank and all these. There
you go. I'll get my agent to talk to Netflix. See what they can do.
Yeah, Ask John special. There we are. So market update. Let's get into this. What I wanted to highlight today, John, and just get your thoughts on it and a bit of a discussion, which I think is beneficial to the attendees, is really not just the impact of COVID, because I think this was a trend that actually was happening anyway, but JLL had an article there, how are companies supporting work-life balance in hybrid working, and just this whole concept around many people working from home has given them more opportunities to improve their quality of life. I think that's the key phrase, quality of life. So for instance, in the US, I'm sure similar to the UK, but how are people adjusting to realizing they can work from home and the opportunities it presents?
So I don't know. It's in my personal circumstances, we're sort of in a more rural setting. So therefore, you don't necessarily see lots of people all the time. I do know that we've upgraded the house when it comes to the network. In fact, I just have another piece of equipment on order to flush out the network a bit better. And you are seeing, my wife does some work for one location. I used to work for another location. There's my in-laws, they're not working, but they're constantly on their devices. It's amazing how much these things get used by those over 80. I think I like to refer to this as when I was in university, that we as students would maybe go to lectures, maybe not. You would do homework from wherever you felt like setting up to do homework, whether it's in your room, whether it's in a common area. For project work, maybe you collaborated, met with people. So it was a very fluid environment. And I could see that a lot of people who have big chunks of their life doing that, the university period or whatever, doing it in the future if the employment situation allows. And I don't see why people shouldn't focus on getting things done and not just showing up, warming the seat.
Yeah.
It's like, so what we want from trades, it's like, finish the project. Don't tell me how hard you're working.
Yeah, just get it done. And I think there's a realization as well. I suppose I've noticed this to an extent. And I can remember Tina from Target 5 talking about this like 15 months ago. The amount of time is, I wouldn't say wasted, but when you're traveling, what you can do is obviously limited. And therefore people are now, I think, find themselves more productive because they're not stuck in traffic. They're not on public transport or in traffic jams, or even just driving half an hour to that meeting where they can't do other things. I think people have
Sort of
realized that as
related
well.
is you can be the road warrior. You can take your office on the road too. So I went up to COP26. My wife was attending, and I sort of joined her along with her business partner. So I was in Edinburgh for a couple of days. Well, I was able to just do whatever. So I do this or do something like this, where you pretty easily can take your work to where you need to be. So the work-life balance, I think, it is a different conversation. It also means people look for housing differently. We'll get to that in a minute, but there's this whole phenomena that like, I need a better network, I need more room, I need a bubble. I joke with people that we all now have portable recording studios if you have a car, where the number of people doing meetings from a car because you can control the noise in the environment. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting as well, and even just in terms of space at home, or the Zoom space as it's called now.
yeah,
Sort of
yeah.
anywhere the camera can see is clean, and maybe beyond that, maybe just isn't quite as tidy as maybe the impression of the Zoom
Or
camera.
what's happening below the waist. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So as you said, the other factor on this is, of course, the whole concept around property. And I was actually on, spent a couple hours on this the other day. This was the Global Prop Tech Online Conference. Quite interesting, because you can see from the logos, so all the prop tech organizations, literally from around the world, from Europe and Canada and all over, are on this conference, and just different speakers talking about the market. This one, hybrid workplaces, caught my attention. A company called Spacewell, and their statistic was 83% of workers consider hybrid work model the most optimal. And again, that leads into the whole idea of property, and how companies perhaps need to, or developers need to think about their strategy going forward. Where would the opportunities be, particularly in retail space being converted to residential, but also then in the workspaces that people have. What do people want when they come into work? This sort of co-working environment, the WeWork,
Right.
Is there a gym? Is there bikes? Is there, recreation areas or cafes? So it really is quite a significant change, John, to the property market.
So it's almost like a digital village where you want all the sort of amenities and other things that people conceptually think of as the village life, where you have the little shops and all the rest of it close by. You can easily get around. You tend to know everybody you're interacting with. Well, in this case, maybe it's your family. And the other thing I was just thinking about, literally looking at the slide, 17%, that's a small slice of people who don't consider it. And they may be in roles like airline pilots or factory workers or farm hands or something. So the work is more specific to something else. And then that begs the question of like, do we start putting housing into airports or something? What does that all mean and on the road? The other side of what's interesting is if people are going more hybrid, if people are able to produce and people are able to measure success, remote work, well, why isn't the work then done from another country? And does that mean we'll hollow out some countries, we'll shift certain work to third world, first world, second world, whatever, where the work will flow to where the people are rather than the people will flow to where their work is?
Yeah. No, that's an interesting angle as well. And regarding the world of property, say in city centre, town centres, similar to what happened with manufacturing in the past, where you've, I know near where I live, there's, the ruins of an old mill, Donaghcloney Village is this massive mill, employed hundreds, probably thousands of people employed there at one stage, and now it's just a bunch of ruins, as I'm sure many parts of the UK are. Regarding work going abroad, the city centres, town centres, they can now just be repurposed. It's not that they'll stay empty. It's developers come along and go, okay, no longer a factory. It's no longer a retail store because of what's happening with digital retail. But now what can this be? Can it be co-working space? Can it be apartments? Can it be some other property that can then service a need in the community? And that's where opportunity exists.
If you look at Northern Ireland, it's one of the economically depressed areas in the country. Relatively speaking, it has a high proportion of government employees. Well, if we can shift work and you can get everybody in Northern Ireland to have a fast connection to their house, if it's a well-educated populace and they're happy to do work, then why can't the work migrate to them? And we don't need to like move people out of London. We just ship the jobs to where there's concentrations of talented people.
Yeah, yeah, and all this creates opportunity for those that think. I mean, you mentioned, I think we were talking at one time about, if you go back, 100 years ago, you had a village and there was a butcher and there was a baker, and there, everyone just did their own trade in a community. And so the whole concept of going somewhere and buying everything at once was, someone had to think that up at some stage, and then someone thought, well, what about if we put a whole bunch of these together, and then became known as a supermarket, and then became known as shopping centers. They didn't exist in the past. Somebody thought those up and have created, a lot of money through real estate by coming up with those concepts.
Yeah, first supermarket was in France.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Okay, there we are. So there we are. Everyone's learned today. The first supermarket ever in the history of the world was in France. So there we are. Okay, so that was an interesting sort of market update on that front. Briefly on our projects, so we are coming soon on a number of projects, another private one as well being prepared behind the curtain. So keep a watch for these. I think the Herne Bay one, the one on the right, is quite near to being view deal. But you keep an eye on these, and there'll be view deal in due course.
Yeah, and that Herne Bay one has commercial, has residential, and there's a current discussion online about, when you have a commercial space, do you make it into smaller spaces and have different local shops? Do you have a larger space? Do you go with national versus local? So almost the same conversation about living and working in one structure, and what do you do with the commercial space, and what types of services will people want?
Yeah, so we can keep an eye out for those when they arrive, and you can look from there. Okay, so let's get into our main topic today. Our Ask John segments, and first one, let's come up here. I lack confidence that when I find a deal, I suppose what I'm saying is I'm not really sure of the deal. Is it a good one or not? So how would you answer that to someone? I suppose I'm guessing they're maybe not a hugely experienced, or perhaps they're experienced in one sector moving into a different sector, but to find a deal that looks like a good deal, they're just not sure. What should they do?
So it's a classic human condition that when we're new to something, when we don't know what questions asked, that our confidence is low. It might be actually a good indication that, oh, you need to ask more questions. The one way to do this is you can ask other people, have a network of people that you push the question out to and see what they think, and ask them what they would ask. It doesn't mean you want them to tell you what you should do. That's actually sort of a bad thing. You want them to surface, well, what questions would you ask? What do you think of this? What do you dislike? What do you think I should look into further? Do you know someone I should ask or check with, or someone that has something like this? So it's a progressive thing. It's a little bit like riding a bicycle. You need to actually just do it to build confidence. And it doesn't mean put the money in. It means evaluate the deals, and then possibly make a decision emotionally, make a decision, write it down, and then leave it alone and see what happens. Let someone else run with it, so to speak, and then see what happens. One thing I have told a few people is go to the Leo crowdfunding site, look at all the deals I've already funded, already closed, and just walk through them. Look at what's information is shared, any questions you have, use the forum if you can access it to post a question in the forum. But you need to just repetition. You got to get the reps in. So find as many deals as you can that you can evaluate, and then reach out to others and get their views.
Yeah, I've had a follow-up there from one of the attendees today. So regarding the confidence part, so they say they lack the confidence when it comes to directly speaking to the vendor and closing the deal. That's a very interesting one, because that's right at the moment when the deal's either going to work or not work, and if you've put a lot of time into it and you've emotionally invested in the deal, and now you're in front of the vendor trying to close the deal, that can be a challenging emotional state to be in, and therefore confidence may well be affected. So I'm sure you've been there in the past. How would you cope with that?
The joke, at least for myself and maybe for other guys, possibly for other women, is the asking someone for a date. Did you actually get the question out? You see this in the Harry Potter movie when he first asked the lady for a date, and she says she's already busy, but then she says, but I would have said yes. It's like, you just got to get out there and try it. And fumble a few times and get past the embarrassment of like, look, we're not good at this. So what? And most vendors, by the way, they are trying to sell their property. So have the conversation with them. Now, I don't want you to feel any pressure as a person to buy something you don't want or to pay a price you don't happy to pay, but you definitely just got to get out there and talk to the vendors, or assume that you're going to pay someone else to do it, sourcing agent, whatever. But it is a skill that you could build, a muscle that you use it a few times, it starts to get better.
Yeah, the point I was going to make, it is something that probably comes a little bit with practice, and even role play. I think there's nothing wrong with role playing a scenario. Sit down with a friend to get the friend to be the vendor, and get them to kind of try and play hardball and try and look not interested, and then it just prepares you for that scenario of how do you react. And that is one way of doing it is role play. Very often underrated as a preparation for key meetings.
That's a good one, actually, because it is most of the emotional impact and getting used to what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, getting your words out.
Yeah, and above all, sometimes it's just being yourself. Sometimes people go in and try and be someone they're not, and then that comes across. If they get asked a question they can't answer, or they get caught not knowing what to say, and all of a sudden the face goes blank. So an element of just being yourself as well.
So a mechanical tip for this question on the screen, plus the question that's come from the audience, is make a list of your questions. Bring them with you. Read from the questions. It's better to ask questions from a sheet of paper than it is to feel later you forgot to ask the questions. So don't worry about the fact you're reading the questions. Say, look, I made some notes. I got some questions. Want to make sure we get to all of them. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you don't mind, let me ask the first one. Okay, fine. Let me go to the second one, and literally just step down the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it also shows a degree of preparation when you do that, which I think is also good. Okay, question number 2. And if anyone does have any comments or questions, by all means, stick them into the Q&A. If possible, it's easier for us to deal with them there. But always good to have feedback or any questions. So the second question then for today, John, is I'm currently having to raise money on a deal by deal basis. How do I solve the problem long term? So this is the age-old problem for developers or landlords wanting to scale up. So how would you solve this problem?
This is a progressive topic. When you're just starting out, when you're smaller, deal by deal funding actually works really well, because then you don't have to get into business plans and overly complex information. You can literally say, can I borrow money for this deal based on the deal? Can I maybe raise equity, whatever you're trying to do? But it's very simple because it's an exact case. As you get larger, as you start to find more deals and you have capital and you're trying to raise the capital almost in advance, you want to start shifting to relationship banking. You want to start looking at maybe some sort of working capital or line of credit or a fighting or hunting fund. And you also become too risky for some lenders, and then you start to become interesting for other lenders. That the lenders who are doing deal by deal funding at some point are going to say, you've got too many deals with us. We can't take another one because of the concentration of risk. You need to go somewhere else. Whether that's deal by deal, doesn't matter, or you're now to the stage. And I asked this question yesterday for another reason. If you hit, say, 10 million or above, you now start to become interesting to some of the regional or what I'm going to say are smaller, but I mean large, small, large banks. So there'll be German banks, there'll be other banks who operate in the UK and are happy to fund portfolios. They're happy to provide lines of credit against future growth, but they're expecting now to see a track record. They're expecting to see a portfolio of deals. You fund a deal by deal basis. They want to replace the finance on that, take it over. So that way they have clarity about what's going on, and they don't have all this stuff that they can't see. And you shift up the food chain of funding, and you start to have relationship banks where 1 or 2, maybe 3, but they have large chunks of the whole of your portfolio, and they're telling you in advance, will you automatically fund any deal that fits this profile? Just brings the paperwork, we'll send the money type of thing. That is maybe the nirvana. You eventually could get to, if you want, all the way to a listed company, real estate investment trust. Therefore, you would raise money in the stock exchange. So there's a journey. Deal by deal is fine. It only gets boring when you've done quite a few, which means you might be a candidate to move up, and then you candidate to move up, and then candidate to move up. And it's literally a different conversation. You have to work with different people. You have to be prepared to provide different information.
I think that's a really good point about the journey. You know, starting off at where people are, but realizing that if they do want to grow and scale, there is actually a journey and different levels almost that you can get to. I think I would just add.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was just going to add about relationships. I mean, whatever level you're going to be at, the foundation of being able to access funds will be on building good relationships with people, be it private investors, be it banks, be it, you know, private equity houses, right up to, you know, the scaling up. So that's important too.
So on a deal by deal basis, one of the reasons I advocate people use a crowdfunding platform to raise equity is because it gives the world a view to what you do. It shows them how you structure your deals. It provides a confirmation that if other investors are investing in your deal, you must be okay, or the deal must be okay, or something they like. And then when you want to go to like a larger raise into maybe an institution, they say, do you have a 5-year track record? Do you have a track record of some sort? Well, you can then point to these public deals. And it's a little hard to argue with the evidence because it was all shared publicly, it was shared in a controlled environment. So it builds that sort of foundation that you can stand on to move to the next level.
Yeah, no, very good point. Okay, the third one then, the final one for today. And again, I should just point out, of course, you know, John's not intended to try and give any investment advice on these. These are sort of answering questions in a generic way. I need a JV partner. Where can I best find one, and how do I establish suitability? To me, the second part's probably more important than the first part, John. It's all well and good finding one, but finding one that's suitable, because we've all heard the stories of, you know, relationships going wrong, and they're very painful when it involves money and property.
It's, I mean, 50% of all the marriages end in divorce, and yet no one walking down the aisle thinks they're in the 50% that they're going to get divorced. It's this age-old problem of how do you vet your partner. The nice thing about a JV deal for real estate is classically it is going to be a fixed term. You pretty much already know when you're going to get divorced because you know the length of the project on the way in. And that's one of the keys. Get very clear about what are we doing, who's doing it, when are we doing it, how are we exiting, what happens when the plane crashes, or they find a dead king, or all the other things that don't normally happen. Do we have insurance? Do we have someone to step in if someone is injured? How do we trigger that? So there is a lot of sort of hard conversations that need to happen. Now, the problem is beyond that, though, is a JV partner who's going to be co-managing, who's going to be part of the management team. So you're both going to be hands-on. It's going to be two. That is fine. You have all the complexities of figuring that out. And it is all about relationships, and probably start with something smaller, start with something shorter, start with something easier. So you can, you know, basically push the other person out if you have to, and have a contract that's written up so that you could do that in either side. When you get past two, it gets complex because now you get management headaches. If anybody's passive, now you're bumping into the FCA regulations. And there's this whole suitability that gets more complex if you get more than one person you're working with. What is suitable? How do you judge suitable? Is there anything you can do to test suitable? If they're a passive investor and say they're exempt, high net worth, or sophisticated, well, maybe you can talk to them, but you can't talk to them about the deal if it isn't suitable, or you shouldn't, because it's inappropriate for them to be in that deal. So you're going to have to understand where they're coming from, what their financial situation is, and take a more holistic or complete view about, are they putting too much money into the deal compared to the cash they have? Are they coming up on a major expense like a wedding, a divorce, university fees, whatever it is, that this is that money, this is their rent money, therefore it's not suitable that they put in the deal. You're getting into an awful lot of stuff. You're getting almost into the territory, almost being like an IFA or something. It's like trying to understand what their risk tolerance is. They're trying to understand how much capital they have. I'm getting very intimate with this person. And If there's more than one passive investor, now you're in the regulated environment. So did you take on board the FCA regulations? So I would sort of say, if you're going to JV partner with someone who's co-managing, fine, that sort of keeps you out of the FCA issues, and they have to co-manage, and that doesn't mean you create a sort of stupid little task for them to do and claim they're co-managing. Proper co-management. Once you start getting into passive investors, I'd rather just see you go to a platform, because then a lot of the complexity is removed and you can reduce the risk. If you have a lot of smaller investors, suitability is less of a problem. You're not getting married to them. They have smaller stakes. You're not depending on them to do things. So it's a lot easier to manage, because it's a lightweight relationship relative to co-management and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and another way of looking at it is the criteria to find a JV partner is not just someone you get on well with or someone you like. Now, there's maybe an element, there has to be a working relationship. Yep. But as many of you know, I'm involved in semi-professional football and always enjoyed studying successful teams and successful partnerships, be they in business, military, or football sport. And two great concepts, John, that people don't sometimes separate is team cohesion and task cohesion. So I use the example of Manchester United, very famously under Alex Ferguson, when they won the European Cup, won the treble. Two players come back in their heyday were Cole and Teddy Sheringham. So Andy Cole, Teddy Sheringham were a really good partnership. They detested each other. They wouldn't even speak to each other during training or in the change room. I mean, really, really did not like each other. But they walked on a football field, and anyone watching thought they were teammates. So task cohesion, they could work together to get the job done, but they definitely didn't go and sort of spend time, having a cup of coffee together. And a JV partner doesn't have to be someone that you want to go and spend your holidays with. They need to be someone that can do their part of the business, do it well, and together the task can be done. It's not always about liking the person in a friendship way. And sometimes people overlook that. I think it is very important.
Yeah, I know the feeling. There's definitely some things where I go to a certain person and I wouldn't exactly call them a friend, but I know I can depend on them to get the thing I want done. So
yeah, obviously that's the point there. So okay, so we're wrapping up today. Thank you for that, John. Really good deep dive into those three questions. We'll repurpose some of that for our social media channels, which is fantastic. So just to wrap up on this, and if some of the staff are on, I'm looking for the registration link for the webinar John and I are doing on Friday at 2 p.m. If one of the staff could fire that into the chat, that would be beneficial, please. But we are gearing up, John, to our fundraiser live bootcamp that we're doing on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of December. I'm sort of getting excited by it, as the preparation's been great. We've been obviously many hours of discussion, and as we sort of count down now, I suppose 2 weeks today will be our third day of the event. So yeah, you're looking forward to it? How you find the preparation?
Well, it's quite interesting. In particular, one of the people that bought a ticket recently, they've been doing a bit of pre-work. I didn't ask them to do anything, but they're watching some recordings. They've raised a question or two. I saw them post a question that's very related to this in one of the forums to get a conversation going, because they're trying to understand a certain topic. So yeah, you can feel the momentum. It's starting to kick in when it comes to people who are prepping for 2022. They want to take their business to the next level. I mean, the audience we're targeting is someone who's already experienced and already been able to do a number of deals. They're confident in their ability. Going back to the confidence question, they're confident in the ability to find deals. They're confident in the ability to execute on deals that they can find. Where they know they have a gap, where they lack confidence, is how to get the funding in place so that they can actually move up to another level and do more transactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's learning, but it's also interactive. It's obviously live online, but it's not designed for people to sit with a cup of coffee looking at a screen for most of the day. There's going to be a lot of interactive sort of tasks to do, and really it's about taking people on a journey so that they understand the various steps of preparing a race. You
can't learn to ride a bicycle by watching a recording.
Yeah, exactly.
This is all about people having to start to put together the building blocks and the information and put together their offers so they can actually raise money for a specific transaction rather than just tell me the theory and I'll drink coffee.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So on the screen there is the link to the landing page, and it's quite a detailed landing page giving a lot more information about the event, what's going to be covered, what are the key benefits. So you can go to that raising-funding.com/class, and that will get you the sort of more details, and of course the booking from there. I suppose in keeping with our Black Friday norm that happens in the world today, so our early bird ticket of 197 actually finishes at midnight on Friday night. So midnight Friday night, we then go to the full 297 price. This is 3 days. It's going from 9 in the morning to 7 in the evening. There'll obviously be some breaks in there, and some of those are breakout sessions. And very much designed to be interactive. So on the screen now is the link to secure your seat. So you can go there and make a
So
payment.
when you say on the screen now, do you mean in the chat?
No, sorry, here down here, raising-funding.com/purchase
Oh, okay.
EP for early bird. That's how you actually book the seat. In the chat should be. No, that's not the one I was after. Okay, no, that's fine. John and I are doing a webinar on Friday. So some people have been sort of reaching out to us and saying, well, what exactly are you going to be covering? I need a bit more information before I
So
make
the
a
one in
final
the
decision.
chat, David, is the one for the webinar registration in the chat.
Oh, I've looked at chat or Q&A, right? It's the wrong one.
Chat, yes.
Okay, I went to the Q&A there.
Tony put it up. It's the right one for the registration as far as I could tell.
I see it there now. Yes, perfect. So if you go to the chat box, then you can see there the post by Tony Allner. That is the registration for Friday. So Friday, 2 p.m. John and I are going to do a 30-minute webinar, and that allows people to ask us some questions about the event, but also for us to share a bit more information about the topics we're going to cover. What are the actual benefits? You know, what will a developer gain from attending this event? And we might be able to disclose, John, maybe some of the add-ons and some of the guests, 1 or 2 guest speakers we're going to have drop in at different times. A couple of panels we're planning. We may be able to share some of that on Friday, so it's worth jumping on. If you're not convinced, say again.
Is this a tease?
This is a little bit of a tease. So if anyone's sort of on the fence and just you're thinking, that's not 100% sure, 3 days, you know, will it be beneficial? Then 2 p.m. on Friday, tune in for 30 minutes, and you'll see the benefit of being at this event. So thanks to Tony for dropping that in. Appreciate that. You can get that from the chat box. So that is us, John, for today. Thank you for being the main guy in the hot seat and covering the Ask Johns. And it is interesting that we're going to have a really good recording of all these different questions. We could nearly put into one recording eventually and have this sort of master Ask John recording, or even just a menu of all the questions. And then people can select their question, click on the video to get the answer on that question. So very, very valuable information.
So if people have questions, then send them to David. We'll get more Ask Johns created, and you'll get your answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so listen, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate that. And we will see you next Thursday. We only got 2 more to go now before we hit Christmas break. But we'll see everyone again next Thursday. Thanks for joining. Have a great Thursday. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.